Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tradesman Experience. This is the podcast built by tradesmen for tradesmen. My name is Josh. The conversation that I have, that you're going to listen to, that I have with Steve Rozenberg, this guy is one of the most GSDMF people I've ever met. I saw him on stage. We were later connected through some people that we know. Actually, one of my clients, Casey, thank you, Casey, for the introduction. And Steve agreed to come onto this show. And if you want to understand how to scale a business, and you want to understand how to delegate, and you want to understand how to systemize, this is the conversation. Because we peel the layers back on the things that you need to be doing, how to create systems. And I'm talking about everything from virtual assistants to daily operations. This conversation is packed full of so much value and so much information. I will tell you that I walked away from this conversation smarter than I was going into it. And I think that there's, again, so much value in there. So this is my conversation with Steve Rozenberg. Please enjoy. When I meet people, I always wonder on high performers, like every time you see a high performer, the question is, man, how do you get so much done? And I have to admit something here, Steve. When I met you in person and then we communicated on the phone, I don't think I've ever been perplexed by that question as an individual. Like, how do you get so much done?
Well, that's a good question, man. I think to me, the answer is leverage. I'm all about leverage. I have no ego, and I do not need it to be me with my name wrapped on the bow. And I have learned, the saying I'm sure you've heard, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together. And I build my companies that way. I coach people that way. I'm like, I've never met a football team made of one person. I've never met a basketball team made of one person. I've never met a business that's successful that says I did it all on my own. It was all me. Yeah. I've never met that person. So I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I just copy what works for other people. Yeah. That seems to work.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to kick off the conversation with that. But now let's educate the listeners a little bit. Tell us who you are and about you and your business and what you've got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people I'm kind of like an onion. I have a lot of layers.
That is a great analogy for you, my friend.
Yeah. So, my name is Steve Rozenberg, born and raised in Southern California. Lived in Guam for a couple years as an airline pilot. Left Guam back in 2001, arrived in Houston, Texas as an airline pilot. As my stuff was on the ship getting shipped back from Guam, 9/11 hit. And I was the second youngest person hired by this particular airline. It was Continental Airlines at the time, and had the most safe, secure job as I'm an airline pilot, 25 years old, got life by the balls. Everything's good. I'm rocking and rolling. Nothing could stop me or phase me. I was told. 9/11 hit, and 2 days later, I got a furlough notice. And basically was told, hey, that safe and that secure job that you thought you had, it was never safe and it was never secure. And now you're going to be on the street with 50,000 other pilots. So good luck. So obviously 9/11 was a very tragic event. And a lot of lives and millions of lives were changed and altered as a result. And I was one of them. Not as catastrophic, obviously, as other people, but it made me realize that I blamed myself. And I'll tell you why I'm telling you the story, but I blamed myself because I got lazy and I let myself listen to what other people were telling me. Like, oh, you're great. Oh, you read your own press clippings kind of. And now I am basically someone that only knows how to do one thing in life, which is fly a metal tube around in the sky. And that job is non-existent. There's 50,000 other pilots. I'm not the best pilot in the world, so I'm not ace of the base. So I don't know what I'm going to do. And there was kind of two parts of me at that point. There was the scared Steve, and then there was the successful Steve. And it was a big inflection point for me because I had to make a decision. Like, what am I going to do? I just got married. Our stuff was on the boat coming from Guam, and I didn't know what to do. So the scared Steve would have gone with the other airline pilots and said, "Oh, you go get a job, go to South America, go to Asia, go somewhere and fly a plane and just suck up your time till you get recalled again." And that's the scared Steve, the one who cowtails to it. We'll call it the successful Steve. The other Steve was like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna rely on that again, because now I'm just gonna be in that same victim mentality and cycle. So I was like, I'm going the other way. I'm not doing what you guys are doing. And I started to read, what do people that are successful do? I had no idea. And I went to that big building with books in it called a library. I had to get a library card, and I start, YouTube and Facebook, none of that was around.
That's right.
So I started, checking out books, and I read a book a week, and I read everything I could about what is wealth. Like, I just wanted to be a pilot. I didn't want to do anything else, but now I was forced to do something else. And a lot of people were tied to real estate. I knew nothing about real estate. I had no idea. But what I thought was, okay, well, when you become a pilot, right, you have to read books and you got to watch videos. But you also have to get an instructor and go up in the air and learn how to fly. I mean, if I said, hey, tomorrow, I read a book last night on flying a plane. Tomorrow, let's go up in the sky and give it a shot and try to make Hawaii. You'd be like, fuck that. I'm not going with you. Like, you don't even know what you're doing. You need an instructor. Someone has to show you. So when I started learning about real estate, I was like, okay, I'm going to get an instructor. It worked for flying, so I'll get an instructor. So I hired a real estate mentor. I paid the guy $10,000, which I did not have. And the guy says to me, he's like, Steve, if you listen to what I say, it'll work. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, why wouldn't I? I just gave you all the money I have, and my stuff is still on a boat somewhere. And I'm living in an apartment. I don't know what I'm going to do. Within 30 days, I do a transaction. It's called a double escrow close in real estate. And I do this transaction. And I kid you not, like, I'm sitting at the title company doing this transaction, and I have the phone in my hand from my mentor, and I'm handing him the phone, and he's explaining how we're going to do the transaction. I walk out of that building with $20,000, and I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe this worked. And I'm waiting for someone to come back in or the cops to raid me. I'm like waiting for something to happen. Nobody comes out. Like, nobody's, So I called the guy, and I'm like, dude, I can't believe that just worked. He goes, dude, it works every time. It works. It's a proven method. I go, you must make people very wealthy. He goes, Steve, sadly, you're one of the few people that actually gets it across the goal line. I go, I don't understand. You said if I did what you told me, it would work. And he goes, yeah. He goes, yeah, exactly. I go, why wouldn't someone listen to you? He goes, dude, if you can figure that out, we'll both be rich. So I started learning about real estate. And then I started learning about property management, because I wanted to have income that was not relying upon the airline industry anymore. And owning real estate is great for building wealth, but it's not a steady stream to pay your rent or your mortgage, whatever. So I started learning about property management. Now, the one thing I didn't know was how to run a business. I thought as the business grew, it would get easier. I'd have these employees, they'd be hoisting me up on their shoulders. They would be carrying me down the lawn. Everybody would be happy. And I would be this multimillionaire back on the beach, drinking Coronas while I'm not flying the airplanes. As we all know, that did not happen. So
I was wondering, I was hoping that you were just going to just give us a punchline, and I had been doing everything wrong.
There's no magic handshake. There's no saying.
I know it.
And so next thing I know, my business partner and I were working 60 to 80 hours a week. It's getting worse. Our company's growing, but everyone's bitching at us. Everyone's complaining, right? Employees are quitting. Customers are yelling at us for, I don't know what the fuck they're yelling at us for, but they feel like it's okay to yell at me. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm a pilot. So I got in a job back flying again. And I'm like, but I wasn't going to go back to that scared Steve mentality. I was like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm going to figure this out. So I went back to the same concept. I'm like, okay, when I learned to be a pilot, I got an instructor. When I learned real estate, I got an instructor. Okay, is there such a thing as an instructor for business? Yeah, they're called business coaches. So we hire this business coach. We have no idea what we're doing. We take him the idea and say, hey, this is what we've done. This is what we're doing. We added some apartment complexes and houses by that time. And he goes, well, here's the thing, guys. He goes, you definitely have a market. It's scalable and there's a lot of opportunity. You two are not the smartest guys on earth and you will be bankrupt in 6 months because you have no idea how to run a business. Mm-hmm. So we hire him on the spot. Now we have a business coach. We have no idea what the fuck we're doing. And we start building this business, but we build it from a perspective, not as the identity of a property manager, but the identity as a business owner. Swap out property management, put in dog food, put in hair products, put in cars. It didn't matter because we learned the fundamentals of building a business. So as our business started to grow and scale, again, we went into more chaos. But I realized I had something that I didn't realize, which was kind of a secret weapon. I've been trained by Boeing for the last 20 years, processes, procedures, structure, checklists, emergencies as an airline pilot. And one day I come back, I'm at the airport, I'm watching this and I'm like, holy shit, this is the answer. So I go back to my business partner. I'm like, dude, I got it. And he's like, what? And I go, we're going to put an airline in our company. He must have looked at me like I had 3 heads. And he just literally turned around and walked away. Like, that's the stupidest fucking thing I ever heard. But we did it. And next thing you know, we started to systematize our company the way the airlines run. Processes, procedures, checklists, accountability, emergencies, disasters. Everything was documented. Everything was streamlined. Mm-hmm. We took that company, we scaled it to 1,000 properties. We were the fastest growing company in Texas. In 7 years, we ended up building it, scaling it, and exiting and selling to a venture capital firm for undisclosed millions of dollars, let's just say, where I became a vice president with them that had 10,000 properties. And when I was done with all this, I started having people approach me going, how the hell did you do that? Like, how did you, and the whole time as you said, I was still a pilot while I did this. Mm-hmm. People are like, how are you building this company? 60% of our company was outsourced to virtual assistants in Mexico. And we were growing and scaling. And the venture capital firm was like, we've never seen a company run automatically without your involvement. 60% of it is in Mexico. You're some airline pilot flying all over the world. And this thing is growing exponentially fast. And I'm like, well, I'm a pilot. My shit was on a boat in Guam. So I went through the whole story and they were like, we want to buy you. And so long story short, that's kind of where I've morphed to today. I've been fortunate enough to speak around the world on what I do. All over, I did tours in Australia, all over the United States, because, you know, people can, there's people that can speak on stages, right? Mm-hmm. There's people that have built businesses and sold them. But there's not many people that have done those two things and they still currently are an international airline pilot with the knowledge and training that injected that into a company. So that's kind of, if you were to say like, why are you so special? I don't think I'm special. I just think I come at things a little bit differently just because of my background and my upbringing. Mm-hmm. And now we can go into the shit show of everything that happened in between, but that's the quick rosy picture of how it was. Now we can go into it.
Yeah. And there's a lot to unpack there. And I want to go all the way back to, you know, getting laid off, and you had Pilot Steve and Scared Steve, Steve wanting to chase that. And then you had Successful Steve. How do you manage fear mitigation?
That's a great question, man. I wish I could say I had this super chant or this rosy thing. You know, I had no choice. And, you know, now with social media, people are afraid to look dumb and they hear all this encouragement. You know, that wasn't around back then. And the reality is it was either figure something out or I'm not going to be able to live or survive. And I've got to go home and tell my wife, I don't know what the fuck we're going to do. So it wasn't like I didn't have a choice. And I think, you know, they always say like when your should becomes a must, you would be surprised at what you can accomplish. And that was really me. My back was against the wall. And listen, I got my ass kicked in real estate. I got ripped off. I got lied to. I got cheated. I bought shitty properties. Everything that I even wrote a book. I authored a book on my stories, because it was like, am I on TV? Like, is this really happening to me?
Right.
But what I realized, and one of my mentors, and I'm a big believer in having coaches and mentors because I wouldn't be where I am without them. One of my mentors, I remember asking him, I'm like, how do you do it? Like, how are you successful? He said, Steve, he goes, it's really very simple. You have to go after the fail. And I was like, what does that mean? He goes, you got to fail fast. You have to fail often. And he goes, you've got to get back up as quick as you can and hit it again and hit it again and hit it again. And I use the analogy when we learned to ride a bike as a little kid, we didn't say like, oh, I don't want to look stupid out here with my friends. Like, I'm not really sure I want to do this. We got on, we fell over. We got on, we fell over. We started falling less and less. And then next thing you know, we're doing jumps and BMX and all the other shit. So I think the reality is it's, we're not as important as we think we are. And ego and pride has a way of clouding our judgment and making us think that we're really more important. But when your back's against the wall and it's like, you know what, if I don't figure something out, I'm going to starve, shit gets real. And so for me, it really wasn't a choice, I guess, to answer your question. It was, I've got to figure this out.
You've mentioned ego a couple times, and I'm glad that you have, because in business, what I've experienced, especially my focus being leadership, is ego is always the reason businesses fail.
100%.
They may say it's money. They might say it's market. They might say it's all of these things. It's always ego. How did you create that narrative to help you understand when ego is driving and when you need to be making decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the if you were to look at the egg or the spawning of that was in the airline industry as a pilot. You can be right driving a plane right into a mountain and killing everyone because I wanted to be right. And so we've learned as a pilot in the airline industry, like in the flight deck, I fly a Boeing 777, so there's 4 of us up there. It's a big plane, right? It holds 350 people. Everybody has a right. And if somebody says something, you've got to respect what they say because they may be seeing something that we don't see. And, there's obviously been a lot of case examples of somebody being right and crashing and killing. So there was a plane coming into Guam in 1997, Korean airline flight 801. And just to give you some reference of this thing, imagine this being a business, because I use this as an example. There's a hill right prior to the runway called Nimitz Hill. You have to clear Nimitz Hill, and then you have to descend down and land on runway 6 left into Guam. It was in the middle of the night. It was bad weather, thunderstorms. It was a 747, full boat of people. And the 2 pilots up front started descending before the hill. The flight engineer sitting behind them said, "You are not where you think you are." He said it 3 times to them, trying to get them out of their tunnel vision to pull back and go, where the fuck are we? They were descending before. After he said it the 3rd time, the captain turned around and said, "Shut up. I don't want to hear you say another word." So guess what he did? He shut up and he sat there and he watched them run the plane into the mountain and killed everybody. So that is ego and pride getting in the way. So I think it started with that. And I've learned that. It's called CRM, crew resource management. And then from there, it spawned into, in a business, it's never about me. It's the sum of the parts. It's never my company. I have a role in the company. With me and my business partner, I was the visionary. He was the integrator. My role, we looked at our company as a living, breathing entity that had to survive on its own without us. Because if it couldn't, it's not a business, it's a job. If I can't walk away from it and let it keep running, it's a job. It was never about me. I just contributed. I needed to be an interchangeable part. If I got hit by a chicken bus down in Mexico one day, I don't want the business to cease to exist. If I'm in Tokyo and I get sick because I eat sushi and I'm, throwing up, and I say, "Hey, I can't fly today." Do you think the airline says, "Yep, I guess we're shutting down. No one's going anywhere today because Steve's sick. So everybody go home and we'll try it again tomorrow." It keeps going because it's not a business. what I've learned about business
Mhm.
is you systematize 80%, humanize 20%. The business needs to be system centric, not people focused. And the biggest mistake I see as I coach a lot of businesses, all sizes, is we make it people focused. And my opinion is that that's a mistake, because people call in sick, they quit, they have
Mhm.
maternity leave, shit happens, right? They make mistakes. A system works 24/7. It doesn't make a
Mhm.
mistake. It doesn't call in sick. It doesn't quit. It doesn't steal data. It doesn't steal money. It does what it's supposed to do
Mhm.
without any discrimination of what their job is. Kind of went on a left turn there for you. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, my brain is spinning because the 80-20 is interesting, because I do believe in, and this is so great, because when I look through my leadership lens, the leadership is people first.
Yep.
And the reason I'm saying this is because I want people to understand the difference. When you're looking through the business lens, you've got to be looking at systems. What I think is interesting, and I like your 80-20, is because I think businesses try to remove the human factor of the operation, which you're talking about, that 20%, right, of the people. You have system implementation and you have people implementing the system implementation. And I think people misunderstand exactly how systems should operate. And so I like your 80-20. The business should be operational, but your 20% of the people factor, again, we're talking business operations, not
So
leadership. So
can I give you an example, an
yeah,
airline example?
please,
Okay.
please.
So picture an aircraft coming up to a gate, right? Most people have probably been on a plane. And so when an aircraft comes up to a gate, you see a lot of stuff happening, right? You see doors opening, cargo, you see passengers. So what it's in the industry, it's called the dance. Okay. So when a plane comes up, so we'll take the plane that I fly as an example. It's a Boeing 777. Gross takeoff weight of this aircraft is 775,000 pounds. Okay. Holds 350 passengers. So essentially, it's an apartment complex coming up to the gate to unload.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want you to just imagine this here. And for the viewers watching, just imagine this. You have 350 people exiting the aircraft. You've got all of their baggage and all of their cargo getting offloaded and getting dispersed to all different destinations or the baggage carousels. You've got cleaners coming in and they're cleaning the inside of the plane. Catering is coming from the other direction and they are restocking water, consumables, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You've got maintenance is walking around the aircraft. They're checking tires, engines, structural integrity of the aircraft, making sure the thing can fly again. Fuelers. Now this plane holds 240,000 pounds of fuel. It takes an hour of high pressure fueling to fuel this thing. So they hook up these huge fuel valve lines and they're pumping fuel into this thing. Flight attendants are in the cabin. They're checking safety of flight items, oxygen, seatbelts, exits, all that stuff. And pilots, we're up front. We're checking the routing, the weather, the destinations, flight computers, safety of flight, making sure that we can get passengers from A to B safe, secure, and on time.
Mm.
And in 1 hour, all of their bags are reloaded. 350 new passengers get on the plane. The plane is buttoned up and it's pushed back. And here's the most interesting thing. Not one person has to talk to someone else to do their job. I don't have to talk to the cleaners so that they can clean. I don't have to talk to the fuelers. But why don't planes crash? They don't crash because of the systems. People make mistakes. Systems don't. The systems catch our mistakes. I could be the best pilot in the world, but if that fueler didn't give me enough fuel, we're not making our destination.
Mm-hmm.
Every business has a dance. Your business, everybody watching here has a dance. It could be a mosh pit. It could be a rave. It could be a tango. I don't know. My question is who's the fueler in your company that's not putting the right amount of fuel that's going to crash your business? Because there's no system to catch it. We make mistakes. Humans make mistakes. It's the systems that catch our mistakes. We have enough catch-alls. And think about this. This is done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anywhere in the world, every second of the day. This dance is happening anywhere in the world. But why don't planes crash? Because we've built the systems. Listen, I've been in some shithole countries. I've been in Lagos, Nigeria. I've been places you're thinking, it works. Plane pushed back. Everyone's on board. The right people are going to the right destinations with their underwear in the belly, and we got enough fuel, and we're launching. So if you built your business, yes, now a fueler has to hook up the fuel valves. That's his job.
Yeah. Okay. So that leads me to my question, because I want to use your analogy, your exact analogy, and get business owners to understand my question. What happens when you don't do your job in your analogy?
Well, we make the news because I'm the pilot and we end up crashing. And so so we crash, right?
Yes. And that's exactly what I want fucking people to understand right now. Like your position, you're the pilot. You have systems, you have people, you have fuelers, you have everything that you talked about. And especially as the leader or the owner or whatever, when you don't do your job, it crashes.
Yeah. I tell people, if you have a bad day, maybe you lose some money, maybe you have an issue, you go home, have a cocktail, smoke a cigar, kick the dog, whatever it is, you're good. If I have a bad day, I make Fox News. That's the difference. And so you put those into perspective of things. So I'll give you an example. Here's another example. And this is something relative to business owners. And I think I talked about this when you saw me speak, but when you get on the plane, right? Well, let me back up. Most people that have an employee or several employees, if that employee was not doing their job, let's say they were messing up and you're watching them and they keep messing up and it keeps progressively getting worse, right? And you're like, and if it got to the point that they were going to either get you in a lawsuit or make you go financially bankrupt, I'll ask you the question, would you get involved and do something? Maybe push them out of the way, step in, train them, help them do something, because your business is at stake, right? Something bad could happen to your financial livelihood of your business, right?
Yes.
So let me put this in another analogy for you. You get on an aircraft, you turn right and you go walk down the aisle and you sit in your seat and you buckle up and you put your earbuds in and not a care in the world. Have you ever thought of turning left? Left is where we sit.
Right.
You don't know me. You've never met me. You have no idea if I'm having a good day, if I'm having a bad day. You're just assuming because I'm in the pointy end in a funny outfit that I know what I'm doing. But why? Why do you trust me? Now, if let's say we take off and you look out the window and you see a shooting flame from the engine and the engine is on fire, would you run up to the cockpit and pull me out of the seat and say like, hey, Steve, I got this. Like you're obviously fucking this up, so I'm going to take over. You'd probably just grip the seat handles better and go, I hope this guy knows what he's doing to save my life. My point is, why is it that you have an employee that you interviewed, you hired, supposedly trained, when they have the ability to mess up your financial livelihood, you push them out of the way? When your life is at stake, I've been a pilot for 25 years. I have never once had a passenger come up and go, hey, Steve, I think you're having a shitty day. I think I'm going to take over. So so why is that inherent trust with pilots, but we can't trust our employees? It's an interesting concept to think about. And you said as a boss, as someone who owns a company, I get it. And you know, I mean, I kind of walked you into that question.
No, that's good. That's good.
It's something that you think about and go, what is it I'm missing? So why is it that there's that inherent trust? Well, we are trained. We are constantly trained. We have systems to protect us, right? There's all these things in there. So my question to the business owners is, what kind of training do you train for your engine failure in your business? Because you know, so we go into the simulators every 6 months. And the one thing we practice every single time is the most dangerous thing that could happen, which is an engine failure at rotation, at takeoff. we hope and pray it doesn't happen, but yet we train for it to happen. Most business owners hope and pray something bad doesn't happen, and that's where it ends. So when it does happen, they're like, "Oh fuck, I knew this was going to happen." But it's, how would you like it if we had an engine catch on fire, and I was like, "Hey, Larry, I kind of remember this a couple years ago. I'm not really sure. Like, anyone got a guess? Anyone back there got an idea of what we should do?" So and you look at professional athletes, you look at anyone that's a professional. What do? They're constantly training and practicing, but yet as bosses, as employees, are we doing that to our team? Are we setting them up for failure, or are we setting them up so that we can be the superhero, push them out of the way? And then we go, man, I can never leave my job. Everybody always needs me. It's like, well, congratulations. That's exactly what you created. And that's the culture. And that's the environment you created in your business as a result of your lack of training and lack of systems.
Yep. So I'm going to share something, and I want you to either agree or challenge me on it, because it's something that I witness often. And that is, business owners immediately have this sense of entitlement because they own the business. And part of the narrative is, well, I take all of the risk, therefore my reward is I get to do what I want, or I get to take off when I want. And the problem is, and what I see is, this is what I tell them, and this is why I was wanting you to agree or challenge. I tell them, I say, look, if you want to own a business, own a business. If you're going to be the leader and in charge of operations, you have to be there. But you still have to have systems. So you've got to decide what role you want, right? To me, again, this is where I'm interested in your opinion, is doing both, muddying the waters with a business ownership role and then an operations leader role, but wanting the benefit of entrepreneurship.
I think I would change the terms that you're using. And what I mean by that is, I think there's a difference. What it sounds like you're saying is leadership and management. And there's a difference. Many people think they're being a leader, but they're actually being a manager. So if you look at the role of a leader, right? Any great leader of countries, leader of businesses, what is it they do? They create the vision, right? There's a vision to where you're going. We're getting people there. And then we're inspiring people to want to be a part of this vision. And then we communicate that to them. So we have to, number one, create the vision. That's our job as a leader, is have the vision, or it's created and we kind of believe it. We inspire people to be a part of that vision. And then we communicate what that vision is. Okay. So for example, if we said, hey, our goal is to be a $10 million revenue company, 35% profit margins on June 1st, 2027. That's the vision of the company. That's where we're going. Right. And a lot of people, they don't like sharing that information, which I think is dumb, because all people are there for then is a paycheck, because people want to be a part of something bigger than them. That's why they join gangs. That's why they join motorcycle clubs. That's why they join the military. That's why they join big organizations like Apple and Google. They want to be a part of a movement. If you are not inspiring them and you are not giving them the vision and you're not communicating with them, all they're doing is coming for a paycheck. So guess what happens when a better paycheck comes? They leave. So that's let's just say, for example, a leader tells everybody about this hill that we're going to charge up today. They inspire them. They communicate what's going to happen. And the leader takes off running and everybody is running behind them. The manager is the one behind them and says, if you don't get that fucking hill, you're fired. So I think many times we're trying to lead from behind, and we're not really leading, we're managing, but we're calling it leadership.
Yeah, I think that's right. So to change the terminology to what you're saying, because it's right. A lot of people want the benefits of owning a business with a manager mentality.
And I think you have to have both. And sometimes if you're wearing both hats, that's fine. But you've got to remember, what hat are you wearing? Are you inspired? Leader is cheerleader. You're leading them. You're leading from the front, right? You're managing. And again, this is just my perspective, but I use the airline analogy. When we have an engine catch on fire or there's an issue, everyone's looking at us going, Steve, what the fuck are you going to do? Like, we have to communicate what's going on. I mean, that's a skill that I don't think I don't think good leaders are born. Listen, I wasn't born a good pilot. I wasn't born a good anything. The only thing I was good at was sleeping, shitting, and eating. That's the only thing I was good at when I was born. Everything else was a learned skill. So I think you can become anything you want to become if that's your focus. And so a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not a good leader. It's like, well, you just haven't focused on that, or maybe you haven't been trained. I think anybody can be, but again, you've got to believe it more than anyone else. I always tell people, when you have a vision, and maybe it's this crazy vision, $100 million company, no one else has to believe it, but you have to believe it more than anyone else. Cause they go, you know what? I don't know if he can fucking do it, but this guy believes it so much, I'm behind him. Mm-hmm. That's when you know you're a good leader. When everybody goes behind you, it's kind of like, when they burned the boats, back to the story of burning the boats, that was a leadership. Hey, you know what? Fuck, we're in, man. We're all in. We burned the boats. We're all in. You've got to inspire those people, because if not, they would have never gone for that. And they would have, he told them burn the boats and they did it. That's a leader, right? I mean, if you look at people in history, even Adolf Hitler, as horrible as he was, he had leadership skills. He moved a country to do something, not saying it was the right thing, but he had the movement. So that's what leaders do. They inspire people because they want to be a part of it. And many times we think we're being a leader and we're just managing people. And guess what happens? They get a better job, they leave. I know because I had that problem. And I realized it was my lack of leadership skills. And I didn't put the leadership side of being a pilot with leadership of being a business owner. I didn't connect those two. And one day someone told that to me. He's like, don't you fly this $250 million aircraft? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and everyone is looking for you for, to be led. I'm like, yeah. He's like, dumbass, that's a leader. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it kind of works. And I never connected the two.
How would you define, or how would you measure leadership?
Well, I think there's many different ways to measure leadership. I think allegiance of people, I think some of it is, I don't know if you could quantify leadership except by the actions of the people that are under you. Are they willing to do what needs to be done when you're not there? Right? Do they believe in what you're doing, that they will crawl, scratch, fight for the vision of the company? Mm-hmm. I think if you looked at Apple, right? Took Apple, I think Steve Jobs, he was not the nicest person, but he was a great leader, and he led them to a movement where people, would stand in line, customers for days to get a new phone that they never even fucking needed because they already had one. But that was the leadership, and that was the culture that he created. So I think if you look at the culture of a company, you look at the core values, things that people don't really think about, core values and culture. It's something that maybe they wrote on a piece of paper and it's sitting in a file cabinet and they never see it again. And I think that's the lifeline. That's like the foundation of a company, And so,
yeah, so good. And I want to stay on that point for a second, because I think there's one of the pieces that is missing in a lot of companies, whether it's in leadership, with their business, you're talking about, core values and culture. No one ever stops and takes the time to define what those things mean to them. Everybody likes the idea of leadership. Everybody likes the idea of having a culture or having a business, but I think people fall in love with the idea. And if you want to be a great leader, you have to define what that means to you. What does that look like for you? And then now you start to embody that idea and get training and change your behaviors and increase your mindset. And then you build followers and you share a vision and do those things. But I think one of those early stages of all of that is people need to stop and define what that means for them. Not just to them, but for them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I remember one time when we were growing our company, and again, I'm a big believer in mentors, and we had I think we had like 3 coaches at one time in different realms of our business. And, we're expanding into multiple markets, and we just couldn't figure it out. And we were trying, and we just couldn't figure out that recipe. And I remember we're almost nervous to tell our coach that we weren't hitting our numbers, right? Because we had metrics and we had accountability. Mm-hmm. And all he said was, be better, and hung up the phone. That was it. Be better. Like, and that was it. And the call was over, and we're like, what does that mean? Like, but what it was in all facets. It wasn't just in one thing. It's like the reason you're not hitting it is because you are not, the team doesn't understand the goal. You're not inspiring them. You don't believe it, so they don't believe it. And so it was such a simple phrase, be better. But it really hit home with us because we actually sat down and, and again, when I coach people, I'll ask the employees, what's the core values of the company? They're like, what the fuck's core value? Right. What will you hire and fire for? What are the standards? What are the standards of your company? Many people don't have that. It's like, well, no wonder why you have people that, are shitty employees. There's no such thing as a shitty employee. It's normally shitty leadership, first of all.
I agree.
And again, everything I tell people, the fish stinks from the head down. I was flown out to Australia one time to work with a franchise in Melbourne, Australia, because the bottom half in Australia is kind of weird. You can't just fire people. There's all these rules and tribunals, kind of like California, basically. But anyways, so I'm from California, born and raised. I can say
yeah,
that.
That's all right.
So he flew me out there and he's like, I need somebody to kick them in the ass. Cause he's like, they're not hitting their numbers and they're bringing the whole franchise down. And I remember talking to it was like, they were like the bad news bears of the franchise. There's about 20 of them. And I spent 2 days working with them, working on metrics and everything we talked about. They had a reason why something wouldn't work. Oh, that doesn't work because of this. That doesn't work because of that. So finally I asked one of the guys, I said, let me ask you a question. I said, do you have metrics or key performance indicators for your company? He's like, oh yeah. I said, what happens if they don't do their metrics? He's like, well, we got to go, we got to write them up. We have a meeting with them and there's this long drawn out process. I go, so let's just say we go through all those processes. What's the end result? He goes, well, the end result is they'll get terminated. Okay. I said, so you expect your employees to be responsible and accountable. They can't just come into work when they want to come in. They've got to come in at a certain time. They leave at a certain time. He's like, yeah. And I said, so what are your metrics? And he's like, what do you mean? I go, well, who do you answer to? And he goes, I don't answer to anyone. I'm the owner. I said, well, maybe that's the problem. He goes, what do you mean? I go, you are the reason that this whole shit show is going on in your company. You don't think that you have to answer to anybody and the fish stinks from the head down. So They're going to go, well, he doesn't answer to anyone. I said, if it were me and this was a different situation, you would have been fired a long time ago. I go, but obviously we know that can't happen. I said, humor me and let's set up some accountability that you are accountable every week to me. Every single week, you've got to turn in your I don't know what those fireworks are, but every week
looks good on you.
It looked good. I'm like, every week you are accountable to me and you are going to turn in your KPIs. And I guarantee you in 3 months, in 1 quarter, because your brain works in 90-day segments, I go in 90 days, we will turn your company around just by that one simple metric. Sure enough, I every Friday, every Monday, he had to tell me what he was going to do. And every Friday he had to give me the results. And next day, sure enough, man, they started just scaling the culture, the people, the values, everything came up just because of one, it's kind of like when you're driving down the road 100 miles an hour, you don't spin the wheel hard. It's just small adjustments. And I can tell where the break is, when you're 3 feet away, it's a world of difference. So I'm 3 feet away from someone's business. I can tell you what's wrong. Not that I'm smarter. I don't need to know roofing, construction, contract. I don't need to know these things. I know business and I can look at a business and say, there's a problem in this train track right here. This is where the break is. And so just that little adjustment and man, turned everybody around just by making one person accountable. And that being because the team members are going, well, shit, now he's got to answer to someone. I better come up with my numbers when I answer.
And that immediately changed his behavior and the perception of his behavior with the team. And oh man, what a great example of how ego gets in the way. The moment you think that you don't have to answer for someone and you don't think you're responsible for anything because you're not being held accountable, most people, Steve, do not have that high level of self-discipline to hold themselves accountable. That's going to set the standard. They need someone else to just a little bit hold them accountable.
Yeah, it's funny. As you know, airline pilot, and I travel all over the world. And if people follow me on social media, one of the first things I do is I go to the gym. Like I land, I fly to Tokyo or Buenos Aires. first thing I do is I go to the gym and I work out. And people are always like, man. And then when I land from wherever I am back home in Houston, I go to the gym again. And then I work. And, you know, so I've been in meetings where it's 2:00 in Tokyo and they're like, people are like, man, I don't know how you do it. My answer to them is, I don't know how you don't.
Right.
Touche. Right. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, they're like, I don't know how you work out. I'm like, I don't know how you don't work out. Like, I'm not saying you have to, but I agree. I don't know how you don't. So I think we both have an understanding that we both don't understand each other.
Yeah.
You know,
That's fair.
But yeah, I think that, you know, there's a lot to be said about leadership. And there's one thing I've learned, and it's such a simple concept, but it makes so much sense. And I always tell people, if you want a different outcome, change the input. So many of us, we want a different result. We want a better life. We want a better business. We want a better whatever. But we keep doing the same thing over and over again, which by definition is insanity. So if you want a different output, change the input. If you want a different action, change the action that's going into it. It's so simple. Like, okay, if you want to lose weight, stop stuffing your face with food. That's probably a different input. Will give you a different output. If you want a successful business, and if what you're doing is not giving you the success as you define it, change the input. Do something different. And as simple as it sounds, you want a different output, change the input. Change the people you're around. And you know, one of the things I think is important to touch on here is, you know, there's a term that one of my mentors taught me, and I'm sure he stole it from someone else. It's called B times, so multiplication, do, D-O equals have. So B-E times do equals have. And a lot of people ask me, they'll say, Steve, like, how do I have your life? How do I have what you have? I want to build a business. I want to travel the world. I want to have money that you can go do what the fuck you want to do and whatever. I'll do it. As entrepreneurs, I think all of us, everybody watching will probably, if I said, you got to work 25 hours, fucking figure it out, you'll have this life. We would do that. The problem is it's not that piece of the puzzle that they're missing. See, you have to become a successful person first to do successful things, to have a successful outcome. I tell people all the time, if you want to build, let's just say an 8-figure business, if you want to build an 8-figure business, and I give you all the skills of what to do to build an 8-figure business, but you have a 5-figure mentality, are you ever going to build an 8-figure business? No, because you're not that person. You have to build a $10 million company in your mind first before you ever build the company. It's kind of like when you go to sleep. You have to act like you're asleep before you fall asleep. People always tell me, they're like, oh, when I build a $10 million company, then I'll be a $10 million CEO. I'm like, you don't get it. It is never going to happen because you don't know what it takes, because there are $10 million opportunities all over your head that you don't see because you're a $50,000 employee mentality. Nothing wrong with that, but don't lie to yourself. Work more on who you have to be before you have to, it's kind of like if you build a house, you build the foundation first. So you go down and then you build the house on top of the foundation. You don't just build the house first and then build the foundation. And if you build a bigger house, or let's say an apartment complex, the foundation is deeper than the house, right? It's not the same. It's not the same depth because the structure is bigger. Well, if you take that a step further and you build a skyscraper, your foundation has to be even deeper than the house or the apartment complex to go higher. So if you take that same mentality, there's a principle. You've got to go down before you go up, right? A tree grows its roots first before it ever sprouts above the ground. The bigger the tree, the bigger the root system. So why is it that we think that we can build this skyscraper of a business with no foundation? We don't invest in ourselves. We don't become the person we need to become. We don't coach. We don't train. We don't do these things. We just think, I got a good idea. I'm going to build a skyscraper.
That's it. They fall in love with the idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I like it. I think it's a great idea. I'm like, right. But does the market want it? Like, did you actually, and are you that person to take it to market? So what happens is the whole thing crumbles because they didn't take the time to go down and build their foundation before they went up.
And So when you start asking those people those questions, right? So they share an idea, they're in love with the idea, they want to build the skyscraper, and you start asking the questions that you just said. Does the market want it? Are you the right person for the market? You start asking these questions. Here's how you can tell if people really are in love with the idea or they want to build this to reality, is if that offends them. If they're offended by the questions, that they think you're saying their idea is stupid. But you get somebody that sets back and goes, "Oh shit, I didn't think about that. Oh, I didn't ask myself that question. How can I get the answer to?" You get someone that is now inquisitive and fires back and now builds a conversation, they're committed. But the people that are only in love with the idea, oh well, fuck, Steve doesn't like my idea.
He doesn't get it.
He doesn't think I can do it. Yeah, he just doesn't get it. It's like, oh God, you're getting dumber and louder, and that's all you're doing. It's like it's pretty, I don't know, it's pretty interesting.
And I always tell people, my first question when people come to me with an idea, they're like, I got this idea. I'm like, is anyone else doing it? My first question is why? Now, you may have stumbled upon something that is prolific that you uncovered this, rare cherry or something. I don't know what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
But I'm like, if someone else isn't doing it, my question is why? Maybe somebody tried it and there's no market for it. I don't know, but the market votes with their wallets. Mm-hmm. And listen, just because I think it's a good idea, and I remember, I'm friends with a guy named Brad Lee. And I remember when I've got some video content on his platform and I was telling about some ideas and he goes, is anyone else doing it? And I was like, with what the concept I had, I go, no. He goes, not yet. He goes, but if it's actually a viable product, it's just a matter of time. He goes, you don't have to be the best. Sometimes you just got to be first.
First, that's right.
So when I ask people, I'm not saying it's a shitty idea. I'm like, I'm curious, like, has anybody, like, have you done your due diligence and done your homework to go, yes, somebody tried it and here's where I think they failed, or it was the wrong time, or inflation. Listen, I think that everything has a cycle, right? It's a season, right? You got summer, you got fall, you got winter, you got spring. Maybe they launched the wrong time. Maybe they weren't capitalized correctly. I don't know. But like you said, it's their ego and pride. Like, oh, he just doesn't like me. He just doesn't get it. He's not from this industry. It's like, okay, but I'm a consumer. And if I wouldn't fucking buy it, probably other people wouldn't buy it, Right.
With your adventure in business, starting in the real estate, going into property management, and you'd mentioned that, you'd bought shitty houses and lost deals, and then you did when did you recognize that you were the limiting factor in the success of your business?
Well, it's funny you say that. So as me and my business partner were buying houses, we had an apartment complex that we sold one of our complexes, and we started buying single family houses. And my business partner come to me one day and he goes, I found this great deal. I was like, really? What is it? He goes, and now this is in Houston, Texas. Properties are not that expensive at the time. It's back in 2005. He goes, we can buy this thing and make like 50% cash on cash return. So like, our mortgage is going to be 400. We're going to rent it for 900. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I'm like, why? He goes, I don't know, man. He goes, it's called a low income rental property. I'm like, sounds like a good deal. Why buy one? So we buy like 20 of them inside of a year. And then we realized why people don't own low income rental properties. Low income was the key, and the people inside the properties is the other factor. Uh-huh. Our maintenance costs were 3 times the amount because our average occupancy was about 8 months, meaning tenants only stayed 8 months and then they would leave. And when they would leave, they would take parting gifts like wiring, electrical, air conditioning units. So we would come back to a shell of a house like, fuck, that's weird. Like, didn't see that coming. And we did it again. And we did it again. So we got to the point that we realized we had a problem. So in our infinite wisdom, as two guys that think we're the smartest people on the planet, because we just made a bunch of money selling an apartment complex, we decided to buy another 15 more. And imagine having a bonfire and throwing Jet A fuel on this bonfire and it just explodes in our faces. And he and I are shocked that this happened. We're like, wow, didn't see that coming. So to answer your question, my wife says to me, if you buy another one, it better be nice because you will be living in it, because you suck at buying houses and you are no good at this. I'm like, I can fix it. I'm like, I just need to buy a couple more and I can get over the hump. She's like, no, you're done. You're done. This is not working. And so and all of a sudden I felt like an addict, right? I was like, I could do it. I can get it. I can get more. I was like, because I had that tunnel vision that I could fix it when I really couldn't. And so that was the click. I don't want to fucking live in one. So that was like the click that was like, okay, it kind of pulled me back a little bit to look at it and be like, okay, looking at the numbers, she's right. Like this isn't working. And so that, to answer your question, that was kind of my aha moment of getting snapped back to reality that the numbers aren't working.
Brilliant. So going from there, I've got several questions, and I think in what order I want to ask these. How would you explain, or how would you define scaling a business?
Yeah. So I think everybody has a different definition. Let me just start with that.
Okay.
One of, my definition of scaling could be totally different than somebody else, right? And it doesn't matter what the business is. The first thing we have to identify when you're scaling the business is the destination of the business. And I call it the sale date of the business. The sale date doesn't mean you have to sell it. It means it is a saleable asset. The way you have a saleable asset means that it is running without any of your involvement. Because if you have to be in your business for 3 hours, 3 days, or 3 weeks, you don't own a business, you own a job. And if you don't put a date, I'm talking a day, a month, and a year of when that actually happens, it goes into the someday file. And we're busy being busy. So as an example, and again, I'll use the flight thing. If I'm going from Houston to Honolulu, Hawaii, I know because we start the flight plan from Honolulu, Hawaii, and we work it backwards. We know what time we're landing in Hawaii. We know how much fuel we're going to have. We know our routing. We know the weather. We know if there's any contingencies, what we're going to do. If there's an emergency, we know where we're going to land. We know everything about that flight based on us landing in Hawaii at 8:50 a.m. Everything is worked backwards. Before we ever get into the flight deck, everything is done in the flight planning room to the destination. When you get in your car and you're meeting someone for dinner, you pull up Google Maps and you know where you're going. You don't just start driving and try to figure it out. So my question, how many people have a business plan that tells them when they're landing their plane? What is the destination? What is the weather? What is the routing? How much fuel do they need? They have no idea. They're just busy being busy. So to grow and scale your company is not, everybody has a different definition. My question is what is your definition? What is the sale date that this happens? So again, I go back to very specific. I want a $10 million company with 35% profit margin with me working 3 hours a week on June 1st, 2027. Now we know where we're landing the airplane. Now we reverse engineer the business and we reverse engineer your life to today. We go, okay, this is our route. This is our runway. Is this realistic? Can we do this? And now going back to what you're saying, this is when the vision comes in. This is when you've got, when you say, okay, this is what we're doing. We're building a $10 million company with 35% margin. This is happening June 1st, 2027. I only want to be here 3 hours a week. That needs to be conveyed to everybody in the company. Everybody, you should walk in and go, hey, what's the vision? What's the goal? When are we landing? Everybody needs to know we're working for $10 million with 35% profit margin. Why would you hide that from your team that is actually going to be the ones that actually get you there? Why make that a secret? And so your goal is that you should be fired from your job. That's the goal, right? You want to be fired because the definition of a business, as I was taught, is a commercial, profitable enterprise, something that makes money, that runs without you and has a sale date. Because if not, it's just a job. So you're never going to grow. To answer your question, you're never going to grow and scale if you don't have a goal and a destination. It's just going to be something that goes on forever. And we all know people that have had that and they're like, yeah, I just, made good money, but it was a job. Couldn't take vacation. Or if I did, I was glued to the phone, headaches, problems. Everyone came to me, but you built it that way because you didn't build it with a destination. You built it to be driving around your subdivision every day. You're never going anywhere. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, no, it's good because it leads me to the next one. So once you have your sale date, once you know like what you want to scale your business to and when. The next question is, how do I structure and systemize, and what do I need to structure and systemize?
Great question. So here's what I recommend for people. A company is made up of 5 things. You've got marketing, that makes the phone ring. Sales answers the phone and converts them to clients. Operations processes that order. Accounting makes sure everyone is paid. And leadership makes sure that everything is running correctly. What I just described is an organization chart. Okay. You need to have 2 organization charts in your business. You need one for, don't know where those balloons came, but they came. So you need one for the snapshot of what your business looks like today. And then you need a snapshot of what does your business look like when you land your airplane, the destination. What does a $10 million company need? Well, we're probably going to need 5 operations people. We have 1 right now. We're going to need probably 2 marketing people. We're going to need 3 salespeople. So now we have a snapshot of where we are today. And now you might be in all those roles. You may be doing all those roles. When I coach people, I need to understand, where are the blind spots in your company? What are we missing, right? Because if this business is going to be functional and we're going to take off down the runway, I got to make sure that we're running on all 5 cylinders. You may have to be doing all 5 of these jobs, and that's fine, but you can't be missing one, because each one of these is vital, because you have today, and then you have the snapshot of where it's going to be as a $10 million company. Now we're just bridging the gap. Now, inside of each one of these org charts, I feel like I'm teaching a course here.
I love
it. Inside of each one of these org charts, there are 4 things that go in an org chart. One is the job description. What does this job do? What does the marketing person do? If I was going to run an ad, what would I say your job is? That's the job description. The next thing are the roles and responsibilities. What are you responsible for? I can't say like, hey, you know what? We should fire John, man. He's not even fucking cutting the grass. You see how big the grass is outside? John's going to go, dude, I'm the marketing guy. I don't give a shit. You're not cutting the grass. That's not my role or responsibility. I take care of the website. I take care of SEO. I take care of pay-per-click. I take care of the, whatever it is, the funnels. So what are you responsible for? So you need to have a job description. You need to have roles and responsibilities. Then you got to have key performance indicators, which are KPIs, and it's the way you measure how are they doing their job. I can go, man, I should fire John. He's kind of an asshole. Like, I just don't like him. I'm going to go, you know what? You're not firing him because he's doing his job. Based on his metrics, he's killing it. Businesses are run on facts and figures, not gut feelings and emotions. Mm-hmm. Data and metrics run the company, and the KPIs are what give you your scorecard. And the last thing is the DISC profile. The DISC profile, every role has a specific personality profile that goes with that role, very specific. So for every org chart position, accounting, you need to have job description, roles, responsibilities, KPIs, and DISC profile. Same thing with operations, same thing with accounting. So going back to your question, that is the foundation that we go down before we go up. We've got to make sure, is the foundation poured correctly? Do we have all the players that we need? And listen, these can be virtual assistants. I had 60% of my company was in Mexico with virtual assistants, but everybody was titled in that org chart. I knew what everyone did. Now I go, okay, what does the marketing guy do? Well, he's in charge of pay-per-click. Okay, what does that mean? Talk to me like I'm a 3rd grader. And basically, we've got to figure out what does that role do by documenting it. We got to flow chart it out. And then we create a checklist on it so that he checks off, because listen, in the Boeing 777, there's about 1,100 checklists, I think. 1,100. I don't need to know them all. I just need to know where to go when we have smoke in the cockpit. I need to know where to go to that checklist to deal with it. Same thing with these roles. Every role should have a checklist associated with it, because guess what I'm doing? I'm systematizing 80%, humanizing 20%. So now I can swap out John for Joe. Hey, Joe, now you're in the role. You're a C DISC profile. Here are your metrics. Here's the job description, and this is what you're responsible for. And here's your systems manual that shows you how to do all this. Go rock out. That's how you do it.
How does someone get to a point where they can trust themselves enough to delegate and systemize?
Well, I believe you always trust but verify. And what I mean by that is the way you trust but verify is the key performance indicators are what tell you how the company's doing. Every department should have anywhere between 3 and 5 key performance indicators or metrics to give me the scoreboard of how they're doing. That's their report card. How is marketing doing? Look at their scorecard. So I think as a leader, you never abdicate, meaning you never just pump it on someone, dump it, and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
You are responsible. Those key performance indicators, like we had hundreds of key performance indicators. As leaders, we looked at about 7. That's all we looked at. They were brought up by a whole bunch of different ones. And as they got funneled up, we got to about 7 that we wanted to look at because those were derivatives of other key performance indicators. What I would recommend is I'm a big believer your brain works in colors and pictures. So I recommend you make your key performance indicators red or green, conditional. If it hits a number, it's green. If it doesn't hit the number, it's red. Very simple. I'm looking for red or green. I don't really care about green because it's hitting the number. I care about red. Why is this not hitting the number? Do we have a system problem or do we have a person problem? Those are the 2 questions.
That's it.
That's it.
Tell me about your experience with virtual assistants. That's a foreign concept to me.
Yeah. So number one, when we were growing our company, I'll say we had a big challenge that we were not able, every time we grew and scaled, our costs were growing and scaling also, our employee costs, other costs. And for us, as a service-based company, as a management company, our payroll was about 59% of our revenue, which was about in line with where it should be. Service-based companies are anywhere between 58 to 63%. We're at 59. But we weren't profitable because we were growing so fast. It was almost like we were growing ourselves into bankruptcy. So
I've been there.
So we tried all these different conversations with I was in India and the Philippines and you name it, and everyone did it. Just couldn't figure out the recipe. It just wasn't working for me. So one day I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine and he's like, dude, we're killing it with VAs. I'm like, I heard the story. He goes, no. He goes, dude, I'm getting them in Mexico. I'm like, Mexico? I didn't know Mexico had VAs. And he's like, yeah, dumbass. Anyone who works from home is a VA. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So he's like, I said, well, what's so special about a Mexico VA? He goes, same time zone. 50% of them either grew up or lived in the United States. So they get the conversation. He goes, and they get it. He goes, they just get it. He goes, and you can bring them up for training because they're only a 2-hour flight away. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. He's like, dude, you should interview one. So I'm like, okay. So I'll never forget, man. So I'm with my business partner and we interviewed this one. Perfect English. Like, I mean, growing up in LA, same. And I go, so what'd you do before this? And he says, oh, I was a 911 dispatcher. So that's cool. I go, wait a second. I didn't know Mexico had 911. He laughed. He goes, we don't. He goes, I was a 911 dispatcher for Texas. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, when you call 911, it comes to me. I go, you mean it doesn't go to like this command center in downtown Houston? And he's like, no. I go, well, tell me what you do then. And he goes, well, we identify what their problem is. We render first aid. And then we dispatch the appropriate authorities and we stay on the line with them until the authorities get there. I mean, our mouths were like, holy shit. I'm thinking, if this guy can save a life, he can save our business. So we went all in with VAs. We got to about 30% of revenue from 59%. That was all our profit. That was where our profit was being hidden. We had more employees giving better service, more systematized. And the thing is it makes you be better. Remember I told you? It made us be better because we had to have the systems in place. I couldn't push them out of the way. I had to make sure that my business was systems focused. Now, at the time, we didn't really know how to do it. So what we did, you could say it was smart, you could say it was lazy, probably both, is we hired the VA and we said, okay, we're going to create this manual together. So we're going to do it together. and we're going to create this document, and then you are going to own this document. And when we hire another VA, you're in charge of training them. So you're going to train them, and you own the document, and you're going to update it and create it. So we kind of did the telephone game with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we had about 26 virtual assistants. And what was nice is we never had one employee try to hold us hostage. If you don't do that, I'm going to quit. Fucking knock yourself out, man. We got 25 more of you guys right behind you. And the US employees, we had about 10 US employees. They knew, hey, you know what? There's no job. If it didn't need a handshake or a license, we outsourced it. We outsourced our maintenance. We outsourced our marketing. We outsourced our client client conversations. We outsourced our maintenance division. We were even doing make-ready turns down there. The contractors would get the bids to our VAs. They would review the bid. They would send it to the owners. The owners would approve it. They would get the money draw. All that was done in Mexico without us. So it's the 80-20 rule, going back to the 80-20. 80% of the shit that we didn't need to deal with but had to be done was done in Mexico. The more important stuff, like, hey, if we don't deal with this, we're going to get sued. That's what was done up in the US. So we could start having our team in the US start doing higher level thinking because they're not answering stupid things like, I don't know how to log into my portal. Why do I have to pay this bill? Stupid shit. It's got to be answered.
Mm-hmm.
But do I need to be paying someone $40 an hour to answer someone how to log into a portal, or do I pay someone $6 an hour? Right person, right seat is what we learned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we're able to grow and scale with virtual assistants. It's the same thing as, especially nowadays after COVID, if there's one thing that COVID taught us, well, two, people are very stupid. And number two is that,
I agree.
and the other thing would be that you can grow and scale a company virtually. And so we did this before COVID. We did this like in 2016. But it is a great way to grow and scale. We got so good at it. We actually, my business partner and I, we went down to Mexico and created our own corporation to place virtual assistants for other people, because people are like, how are you doing it? It's like, well, right person, right seat, train them. And they're like, could you find me one? And it got so big. We're like, well, fuck it. Let's just go down there. So FYI, 2 white guys in Mexico trying to start a corporation in Mexico is not the easiest thing to do, but we got it done. But it was not easy, but it helped us because it helped us be a source for us to find good quality employees.
I want to turn it just a little bit here. If you're talking to either a single owner operator or someone that's got a very small team, that's currently in the trenches every day. They own the job. They're doing the work. They're in the field. They spend no time working on the business. What advice would you give them on how to identify the first thing that they need to either structure or scale?
That's a very good question. I'll just tell you what I do. If we want to lose weight, we have to step on the scale and then maybe measure our meals and figure out what we're eating. If we want to figure out what we're doing with our finances and we go on a budget, we got to track our money. If you want to see what you're doing with your time, track your day. So what I normally do, and this is, and if you want, I'm happy to give this to your audience as a free gift. I have a spreadsheet. It's a 2-week time study. And the 2-week time study, if I said, hey, stop doing stupid shit, you're going to go, Steve, everything is important. Well, when everything's important, nothing's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this time study, you do it every day, Monday through Friday. You do it for 2 weeks. After you do the task, there's a drop down with 3 options. Option 1 is productive, only I can do this. Option 2 is productive, but someone else can do this. And option 3 is not productive at all. Now, spending time with your kids, you don't want to say someone else can do this. It's only you can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's things like, going to Home Depot. It's productive, but do you need to really be doing this? So what happens is the first week, it really opens up your eyes to going, holy shit, I am not as productive as I thought I was. I am doing minimum wage activities. And now they're clearly identified. Week 2, you're starting to be a little more cognizant of it. The reason of doing this strategy is not to, it's not for me to look at it and change who you are. I want to see the patterns, because the patterns will tell me what you're doing right or wrong as we go through the patterns. So At the end, it totalizes everything for you. It'll say, you just did, 200 items equaling 3,000 hours a year of not productive shit. That's what you outsource. That's telling you these are low-level tasks that you shouldn't be doing. You've identified it yourself and said, these are the tasks. Now, I recommend that you should spend at least 4 hours a week working on the business. I don't care if it's 30 minutes a day. I don't care if it's 4 hours on Saturday. You should, in your calendar, call it a non-negotiable. When you put it in there, it does not move, that you spend in 1 week a total of 4 hours. This is creating the systems, the job descriptions, the org chart, all the things. And listen, you're never going to just have time. As entrepreneurs, you're never going to be like, fuck, I got nothing to do today. I think I'll create an org chart. It's got to be intentional, right? So the only way it's going to be intentional is by you actually fucking doing it intentionally. So the first thing I would recommend is do a time study, right? If you happen to send you mine, or you can just, you can write it down. I don't care what it is, but what you're trying to see is, are you doing a high level task or are you doing a low level task? The low level tasks are the low level, low enjoyment, low income producing things. You go, I get it's got to be done, but does it really have to be done by me? And based on the goal of where you want the company to go, okay, you have to, again, if you want to build a $10 million company, you got to be a $10 million CEO. So are you doing what a $10 million CEO does? Or are you doing what a $20,000 employee does? You're never going to build a $10 million company doing $20,000 work. It's just not going to happen.
Yep. No, I like that. I want to see that time study. I'm very interested in that. And
Sure.
we can share that with the listeners.
Absolutely.
Because what that gives them, not only just awareness, mindfulness, of their time, and you're looking at low level task, high level task. When people start looking at their operational value, if you've got a single owner operator who's doing $200,000 a year in revenue, his operational value is about $100 an hour, which means he needs to be spending as much time as possible in that $100 an hour bracket to build and grow the business. So if it's a $15 or $20 or $25 an hour task, you're now neglecting the $100 an hour value, and you're focusing on a $20 an hour task that you can and need to outsource.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. What have we not covered yet that you want to share? Because this has been fire.
Yeah. I think the last thing I would say is, one of the biggest things that I have learned as entrepreneurs, we're very good at operations. We're very good at building widgets and gadgets and tinkering with it. What we normally stay away from is that scary thing called marketing. And I believe marketing is the most important thing in your business, because if your phone is not ringing and you are not bringing in business, you're going out of business. You just don't realize it till your bank account says zero. And by then it's too late. And so a lot of people don't really understand it. They ignore it, or they outsource it and they don't want to know about it, that's abdication, which I don't agree with. One bit of advice we can wrap with, I'll tell you, is I would recommend, if you were, let's say you've been in business for a year, right? What I recommend is take your clients over the last year and grade them A through D. D, just like in school, you get a D client. They're cheap. They take up your time. They bitch. They complain. Every time your phone rings, you're like, fuck, here we go. It's going to be fucking 30-minute bitch session and nothing is going to be done as a result of this. That's a D client. You got to grade them. And I'll tell you why in a minute. The C clients, they're either cheap or they take up your time, but they're tolerable because they pay the bills. The B clients actually are your silent majority. They make up the bulk of your clients, but you just don't hear from them. They pay their bill on time. They're always nice to talk to. They never complain. Thank you so much. You move on. The reason you don't hear from them, because you're always hearing from the Ds. The Ds take up 80%. It's the 80-20 rule. They're taking up 80% of your time. So you're afraid because you think all your clients hate you, but it's really the Ds, and they are the minority of your clients. So the Bs are the good ones. The A's are just like the Bs, except they're evangelical. They are raving fans. They refer people to you. What you need to do is you take the A's and the B's and you find the common thread. Now, I teach this in my 2-day event. I teach this in my marketing, but I'll do it quickly for you. What is the average age? What is the average income or the average project price? What is the gender? There's a gender that you do better business with. I don't care what you say. There's a gender. There is a demographic area. And the biggest question is, what problem did you solve for them? Why did they pick up the phone and call you? There is a common thread of these 5 things between your A and B clients. When you figure that out, that is now your marketing message, because you want to catch more A and B clients. Now, you go to your D client. What is the average age? What is the average income? What is the gender? Why did they call you? Now you know where not to market, to do away with the D's and spend all your money, time, energy, and focus on the A's and B's. And if you don't know, you simply call them up and ask them, hey, just curious, like, why'd you use me? What made you call me? Well, you answered the phone first. Okay, good to know. Call your D's. Just curious, why'd you use me? Well, you were the cheapest. Good to know. And all of a sudden, now you're focusing on the 80-20 rule, and you turn that 20% into the 80%. And now you have the A and B clients create a referral program to get your B's to A's, right? And that's how you grow your company, and that's how you market the right way. So I go into more marketing in my 2-day, but that's a very simplistic way that you've already got the target that you're dealing with. You just got to ask them questions. We're so busy fishing for new fish, we never go back and find out, why did this fish bite? Why did this person use me? There's a lot of valuable information in those people that you've done business with. We're just not asking them.
God, that's brilliant. I feel like I could have even stopped recording. You could have just talked to me, about the marketing thing. Tell us about your 2-day event.
Yeah. So I host a 2-day event here in Houston, Texas. I do it every month. Every month it's 2 days. And we break down, number one, we go through the cycle of your business. And it's a very small group. It's 20, 25 people. So it's very in depth, and it's a workshop. It's not just me talking. And first thing we do is we create your business flight plan. We create your business plan to make sure, where are you going with this? Right. And a lot of times people are like, man, I've been dreading this for years. And in an hour and a half, we fucking built it. So we build out your business. We build out your business plan, your business flight plan, because once we know where you're going, then we go into the marketing. And I go down and I break down the top marketing mistakes that are putting companies out of business, marketing mistakes that they don't understand they're doing wrong. And we discuss that. Next, I go into sales. So I go into scripting, role playing, personality disc profiling. So all of that is one day just on sales and marketing, because the monetization of your business is the most important thing, I believe. Because if you are not monetizing your business, you're going out of business. So that's day 1. Day 2, we come back and we get into operations and systems. We talk about, how do you hire? How do you interview? How do you onboard? How do you metric and measure the success? How do you instill core values in the company? How do you instill the culture? All the things that are missing, we go into. Once we have that, and we've come up with the systems of how to hire the right people, get them trained correctly, get them onboarded correctly, then we go into how to scale and outsource. So talking about virtual assistants, I go in depth and I show you exactly how we used virtual assistants. So I show you everything a virtual assistant can do, and your mind will be blown. I tell you, you'd be like, holy shit. And then the last thing we cover on day 2 is leadership. Why do people stay with you, or why are they leaving you? People stay and go because of the leadership or lack thereof. And so we talk about, and then not just in good times, but we talk about disasters and emergencies, defining those. What is it? Most people don't even know what is the definition of a disaster versus the definition of an emergency. But when one happens, they're going to be looking at you going, fuck do we do? And you're like, I don't know. I'm not even sure the difference. So this is 2 days of this. And it is like, I tell you what, I mean, you leave a different person. We've been on this,
Mhm.
what, an hour and 20. Imagine 2
Mhm.
days with me. It's
Yeah.
it's pretty prolific. It's pretty life-changing. I do it because I think it's important to give back. I'm a big believer in giving back. I'm a big believer in trying to help. And everybody tells me, you know what, man, I look at things so much different. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I just say it differently. Everything I've said today, at some level, everyone has probably heard. Maybe this is not the way I said it. That's kind of my take on it.
Mhm. How do people learn about the 2-day event, and how do people find you?
Yeah, so they can to find me, you can go on any of the social media channels, Instagram, if you want to see me traveling and flying and all the bullshit. Facebook, all the stuff. If you go to my website, which is my name, Steve Rozenberg, Rozenberg, steverozenberg.com. And if you go under events, it's called the Takeoff event, which is a 2-day event because your business is taking off.
Mhm.
You can go there. I do them every single month in Houston, so you can register. I'm not sure when this is going to come out. It's super cheap. It's like $9.97. It's like less than $1,000 for
Mhm.
2 days. So I tell people, if you don't have 2 days or you don't have $1,000, you've got bigger problems because
You really need to get there.
then you really need to go because you got
Yeah.
bigger shit going on, and I tell people this is meant to accelerate your business. And listen, I give a money back guarantee. I tell people, if you get done with this and you're like, Steve, you fucking suck, I'll give you your money back on the spot because I don't get rich off of $1,000. It doesn't
Right.
make or break me. I do this because I think there needs to be more people out there giving than taking.
Mhm.
And I'm a big believer in giving. And so I try to give, and I give 2 days of my life. And, you've seen me on stages. I get
Mhm.
paid $10,000 to $20,000 for 1 hour of my time. I'm giving you 2 days of my life for $1,000.
Mhm.
And I'm redefining your business, and I'm making sure that you walk out of there. And not just that, what I've learned, what is actually even more powerful is the relationships with the other people there. All of a sudden, you know how it is, right? When you're at events
Yeah.
and you're talking, next thing you know, you're like, oh, I've seen so many conversations and businesses start to form just by doing, because we hang out, we have happy hour, we
Mhm.
bullshit. We're just hanging out for 2 days. There's a lot to be said, not just the learning, because I break you up into groups and you learn from each other. So, there may be people in the property management industry, real estate investors,
Mhm.
roofers, contractors, whatever it is, but we're all entrepreneurs. We just have a different way that we make our money, but we're all entrepreneurs at heart. So why not learn how some of these other entrepreneurs are doing things and go, shit, I didn't think about it that way. That's actually a pretty good way to close a client or to get a client or to keep a client. And it's vice versa. So I think, again, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go further, go together.
It's been a complete honor to see you on stage, to have this conversation. I'm going to come to Houston. I'm just telling you.
Dude,
I'm
I'd
going to
love it, man.
come. And it's exciting for me when I see people like you. First of all, it's exciting because you inspire me. Your passion, your enthusiasm, it's infectious, and the way that you love to see people succeed. And I think that is such a great quality in people. And the other thing is, we align on so many different values and things that we do and what we have. So, man, I'm indebted to you for spending your time with me. I know I'm better for it. I guarantee. I know my listeners are better for it. So, Steve, man, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And again, I'm very accessible. If any of your people want, more information or they want it, something didn't click, I'm pretty accessible. You can reach out to me. I'm a big believer in giving back in abundance. So I don't hoard my information or stuff. Like I said, the spreadsheet, more than happy to send it out. If somebody wants to call me and say, hey, Steve, what the fuck does this mean? Or what does this say to you? I'm happy to spend a couple minutes and give you my perspective. Cause I didn't really have that when I first started. And I used to always say, if I ever got into a position where I can just give back, I will. And I am now. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, I'm grateful for it. And I
Thank you,
appreciate
man. I
that.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Everybody go check Steve out. Go look at his platforms. Go sign up. Go to Houston. I'm telling you, it's worth the money. The ROI is going to be life-changing. So, guys, thanks for spending this time with us. Till next time, get shit done.
Later.